Okay, let's talk about the jQuery selectors. So let's jump right into it. So, what are jQuery selectors? Well, jQuery selectors allow you to select and manipulate HTML elements that's on the document. That's all they do. Pretty much, they just allow you to manipulate the elements on the HTML document and select them. So, HTML elements are based on a hash symbol, or we know as the ID, the identifier. And I'll show you an example as well. So let's take a look at one of the jQuery selectors to identify an element by its ID. So let me pull up my template file, and you guys can just follow along with me, or you can download my template file and write code as I write it. Your choice. So mine, it's already pulled up, and inside my ready function, when the document and the jQuery library is loaded, I'll go ahead and write some code here. So I start off with the jQuery syntax, a $, parentheses, and double quotation marks inside. And if we go back to my PowerPoint, we want to reference the HTML tag by its ID, so we want to use a hash symbol first to identify the HTML element by its ID. So type a hash symbol, and let's call our ID my paragraph. Okay? And what do we want jQuery to do once we select this HTML element with the ID my paragraph? Well, let's just say, let's call an alert function. Let's call a dialog box to say, hey, I've been clicked. So we tell jQuery, hey, can we perform an action called click? So we call the function click, because that's the action we're going to perform on the HTML element, followed by the ID of my paragraph. And inside the click function, I'm going to call an anonymous function. So I'm going to create an anonymous function, and I'm going to call out an alert dialog box when the HTML element is clicked. So I'll go in, double quotes, hello paragraph, I have been clicked. And as we can see right here, this is using jQuery syntax. So again, we start off with the $, followed by the curly braces, and inside the double quotation marks, we're using the selector type by ID. We're using the ID selector type. So once we set that up, we're going to actually use the function, the jQuery function called click, and we write a anonymous function, or you can pass in a function that's already declared that you defined. But me, for right now, I'm just using an anonymous function, and inside that function, I'm going to call an alert dialog that's going to give me a dialog box that says, hello paragraph, I have been clicked. So what I want to do next is actually declare an HTML element with the ID my underscore paragraph. So I go down to my body and I do some paragraph elements here, and ID equals my paragraph, because that's what I named the ID, my paragraph. And I'll just put some text inside here. This is my first paragraph. And I control an S and save that. So if I go to my browser, which I'm going to click run, launch in Firefox, It should work once I click the HTML element with the ID of my underscore paragraph. And once it does that, I'll show you the line by line code as well. Let me minimize this. Okay, so let me just enlarge this a little for you guys. So if I click it, there you have it. Hello, paragraph, I have been clicked. And I'll click OK. So again, what's happening here is that once my jQuery library has loaded successfully, it's going to jump down to the ready function and it's going to call an anonymous function. And it's going to execute this block of code. So on line 16, I used jQuery syntax, and I'm going to use the selector type ID. I'm going to ID the reference with the name my underscore paragraph, which is referencing the paragraph element here specifically. And the action I want to perform on it is a click action or the click function. And inside the click function, we want to pass an anonymous function that we want to do and perform some other lines of code. And we want to call the alert dialog box. So once I click the HTML element, it's going to call the anonymous function and it's going to perform this action or this instruction, which is the alert dialog box with the hello paragraph I have been clicked once again. So again, I go back to my browser, click it again, and that's exactly what it does. So if we go back to my PowerPoint, let's actually do it by class name. So we can actually use the jQuery selector. It's the dot selector, and this is very similar to CSS selectors as well. It actually uses CSS selectors. So for the class, we want to use a dot. So if we use the syntax, it's going to be the dot followed by the element class name syntax. So if we go back to my browser and go back to my source code, we just need to modify a few changes. So instead of the hash symbol, delete that and just put the dot. And you can keep everything the same as well. And let's just change a little bit of the text. Let's say instead of I have been clicked, let's type this now is clicked by the class selector. Okay, so if we go down to our paragraph element and modify the ID attribute, which is class, and I click save, we should get the same effect but with the alert function. It should say this now is clicked by the class selector because we're using the selector class type. So selector type is class, which is just the dot followed by the class name, which is my underscore paragraph, which we used previously. So if we refresh my browser and I click it, hello paragraph, this now is clicked by the class selector. So it's extremely easy. The only thing you're doing is just changing the selector type. And like I said, again, it's using CSS selectors, and the dot selector represents the class name. So if we go back to my PowerPoint, let's do a overall in general class element selector. So with this, the element name is just the element name inside the double quotation marks. So for example, let's go back to my source code and let's just do the paragraph element. Let's just change the text inside the alert function. And let's just type all paragraphs are now displayed. Okay. And let's just copy a few of these paragraph lines of code. Let's get rid of these class attributes. So let me erase that and erase this one. And let's just put second paragraph and third paragraph. And I always get into the habit of Control and S-ing my files, which is save your current work, which I always do. So if we go back up here now, and as we can see here inside the double quotation marks, it's just an element tag name, and the P represents the paragraph element. So to my logic, what should happen is that once we click on any of the paragraph elements, the alert dialog box should pop up and say all paragraphs, forgot the S, all paragraphs are now displayed. So if we go back to my browser, I'll click refresh. It's displaying all of my paragraphs. And if I click, let's say, the second one, that pops up with our dialog, which is the correct logic. All paragraphs are now displayed. I'll click OK. I'll click the third one just to confirm it for you guys. All paragraphs are now displayed. And for the first paragraph, there you have it again. So again, this is extremely simple. It's just using CSS selectors, and like I said again, inside the quotation marks, you're just putting the element tag name here, and the dot click, you're just applying the function called click once that element tag name is clicked upon, and you're passing in or declaring an anonymous function. And once you click on that element name tag or that element name, then you can actually have it do whatever you want. So let's go back to the PowerPoint. So as again, element name, the selector type, and you can put the dot, and after the dot you can actually perform an action or a jQuery function name and have it perform an action on that selector individually. So again, all selectors in jQuery start with the $, and then it's followed by the parentheses, and inside the parentheses there's going to be the double quotation marks, or you can put in the double quotation marks. And inside the quotation marks, it's going to be the selector type followed by the name, as you can see in all of these as well. So again, we'll just go over it. So to select an element by ID, you put the hash key, or if you want to select an HTML element by class name, you use the dot selector, or if you want to reference all of the tags with the same name, element name, you just pass in the element name. Okay, so again, for the element selector, the jQuery element selector selects elements based on the element name. You can select all div elements on a page like this. So I'm giving you examples. So this is what it should look like if you want to select all div elements on the page. This is how you declare it in jQuery. And for the ID selector, the jQuery ID selector uses the ID attributes of an HTML tag to find the specific element. If you guys already know that in JavaScript, congratulations. And it's used to find a unique element on a web page. If you do not know that, for you newbies and beginners out there, you can select an element using its ID like this. For example, you're just passing in the hash symbol, and it's followed by the ID name. So for the class selector, again, we're just using the dot followed by the class name that's attached to the HTML element. So the jQuery class selector finds elements with a specific class. To find elements with a specific class, write a dot character or a period followed by the name of the class. And pretty much that's all you do for the selectors.